Hi, I'm Leslie Koo. The US government debt, the national level, has reached 41 trillion. How big is this? If we measure by the size of the US GDP, it's 1.23 times of the US GDP. So the next question is this number, the 41 trillion, will it increase, move upward, move higher from here? Yes, definitely. If the US government does not restructure their fundamental spending, the way they spend the money, and the way they do their taxations, their tax codes, if they remain the same, yes, for sure, it's going to be higher and higher and higher as the days goes by. The US government needs to restructure their economic, the architecture. It cannot depend so much on defense, aircraft, tech. So far, other than these three, there hasn't been any sectors that the US economy can rely on. That's why you can see that the latest retail sales indicator of the US domestic demand is not very good. It's not very good. And on top of that, the job market does not have a very good, a rosy outlook. So if the US continues to depend on the domestic demand, like consumer spending, defense, on the big transportation tickets, there is a worry, a very, very big worry. So that is for the US government to think through, for the Republicans, for the Democrats to think it through. Now, the next question is, yes, the national debt is moving up. And how are they going to finance this? The domestic funds, like the pension funds, so on and so forth, how much more buffer can they have to continue absorb this debt? Basically, to lend money to the US government to keep the current engines, economic engines, spending engines, so on and so forth going. How much more buffer? They have been buying all these debts. So how much more? And besides domestic funds, the foreign holders, this is the next questions. Right? How much confidence do these foreign US Treasury holders, the existing ones, have? How much confidence do they have to buy more US Treasuries? The big ones are Japan, South Korea, and China. These are the three that maybe the major trees that have big appetites. What's a big appetite? That has big buffer for US Treasuries. Well, the question is, how much are they willing to pile up the existing US Treasury portfolio? Japan, well, maybe it has no choice. South Korea, under the current South Korea administrations, maybe, because we know that the current South Korean president is, unlike the previous one, this one is I won't say it's pro-China, but he wants to maintain the balance, China and US, to balance. Because for sure, South Korea cannot afford to offend US. So it needs to do balance. But the thing is, it cannot keep on loading up the US treasuries like before, because there is a risk if the level has ballooned to 41 trillion. There is a risk, right? So, like all those questions that I brought up just now. So, if I can think of those questions, I'm sure the governments, the central banks, they all know, the analysts that they have, the strategies that they have, they all know. So, South Korea, maybe, not sure. Now, next, China. For sure, China is not going to take in more US treasuries. From the statistics, we can see that China has been selling the US treasuries for a very, very long time, at least since 2022. So the latest level on July 2026 is 633 billion from more than 1 trillion many years ago. So you can see that it has been on a downtrend. And especially given the current tension between the US and China knows that US is trying to suppress the rise of China. It doesn't make sense. It only makes sense for China not to recycle its US dollar surplus into US treasuries or US dollar assets. Right? So it only makes sense for China not to have that. Right? Because if you look at China, the trade surplus on average, like based on the past 12 months average, per month it has about 99 billion surplus to recycle. So of course it can use this US dollars to buy the minerals, because when China buy minerals or buy the raw materials and so on and so forth from other countries in the international market, most of the time it's still priced in US dollars, so it can use that. But unlikely that it can finish 99 billion per month on the spending. For sure, you have assets that sits on its US dollar bank account that it must recycle, right? It doesn't make sense to just keep this US dollars. Okay, I don't buy the US treasury, I don't invest into stocks, I don't buy into any US dollar funds, I put it in a US dollar account. Then China is exposed to US sanctions. What if it cannot take back these US dollars? This can happen. Even though we know that China is now huge, the number 2, if by PPP standard, purchasing power parity standard, China is the biggest. It's the most powerful in terms of economy. But China can rule out that one day, if the US has no choice, it will freeze the US dollars deposit. So, what can China do? No US dollars equities, no US dollars treasuries. What can you do? Right? Okay, let's talk about the US Treasury first. So we know that China is not going to power up their Treasury portfolio. It will continue to sell off. Based on my assessment, China will continue to sell. And in the next 3 months, it has very high chance that it will, the portfolio value will fall below the $600 billion mark. This is my outlook for the next 3 months. Okay, now back to what China can buy, can recycle these US dollars. Gold. Gold is one commodity that US cannot sanction. And I think based on the current situations with, even though the big three rating agencies have not talked about the US ratings, China is not going to wait. Is going to, I will reckon that besides speeding up the unloading of the US treasuries, it is going to speed up to the buying of gold. So gold is one commodity that China, I believe, is going to recycle the excess US dollars on this. On gold. Of course, it will be on other precious metals as well, but gold is one of the popular hedging, inflation hedging, to safeguard the values of your purchasing power, so on and so forth. So gold is one major commodity that China will recycle the US dollars on. And what that means is, I believe it will accelerate the buying of gold in the coming months. And recently I have made a forecast on the level of gold that China will buy, at least the People's Bank of China, the China Central Bank will buy. Now I have revised the outlook for the gold portfolio of China. It will definitely going to load up. And I would think that 80 million ounce mark is going to come sooner than I previously forecast. It's definitely going to be sooner. It cannot be later. It doesn't make sense for China to not to speed up and just wait and see. It's not in China's favor, so it doesn't make sense for China to do it. So in general, this ballooning US national debt will prompt, or has triggered China to speed up the unloading of the US Treasury holdings and speed up the buying of gold to increase its gold portfolio at a much faster speed than before. And what that means that the gold price will have support, not from other than China, support from China, buying also from the purchase of other central banks that have deep pockets. So we'll see that there is an upward momentum coming in for the gold price in the months ahead. Okay, that's all for this video. Thank you for watching. See you in the next one. Cheers.